Hi everyone, my name is Samantha Vidya. I'm a graduate of the Leadership Academy, and today I have the privilege of introducing José G. González. José González is a conservationist through pursuit and education, a teacher and artist by training and practice, and a Chicano Latino by identity. José G. González, pronouns he, him, is the founder and former executive director for Latino Outdoors. He is a professional educator with training in the fields of education and conservation, while engaging in different artistic endeavors with art and messaging, often exploring the intersection of the environment and culture. His current work also focuses on equity and inclusion frameworks and practices in the environmental, outdoor, and conservation fields. He is also an illustrator and science communicator. José likes to play with design, words, science, and education, engaging in the interdisciplinary intersections of how we view and engage with the world. Be it a piece of art, poem, or scientific fact, José likes to weave ideas with people while appreciating the beauty of it all. José is a proud community college graduate, received his BA at the University of California, Davis, and his MS at the University of Michigan School of Natural Resources and Environment. Please give a nice warm welcome to our honored guest, José González.
All right, thank you so much. Gracias, Samantha. I hope you can all hear me well. I also appreciated the mention from the Honorable Hilda Solis that's I received that with a lot of gratitude. And first of all, buenas noches, as we're on reaching you all. Jose, as was noticed, although full disclosure, full name is Jose Guadalupe Adonis González Rosales, with a little bit of the León. He and his, although I'll also respond to anything offered with respect. And I'm greeting you all from the ancestral, traditional, stolen and unceded lands of the Nisean, Southern Maidu, Miwok, and many, many others in what is at the moment Sacramento, Sacrastlan. I'm really excited to be here because for many, many reasons. Part of this is the joy in knowing that you are going and have gone through an experience that I wish I had in terms of when I first started my journey in this work. And that I am hopeful and optimistic that you are weaving the networks, the resilient, you are the mycelial leadership that is going to both grow and sustain this ecosystem of change, of movement. And I am so excited by that. I remember a scholar, Laura Pulido, who often talked about the tributaries of environmental justice, of the movement. And with this reminder that it was less important about thinking what is like the one event, right? Like when did it start with a single event, and to acknowledge the river that they all feed. And to me, that's powerful because it is a way to really think about not just how we can be expansive and inclusive of this work, while also for me, what has been affirming and nurturing is how much of the language of ecology, of how nature speaks, to guide me in both unpacking this work and help me move forward. Obviously, it's crucial and important to recognize Black leadership in environmental justice work, and specifically knowing that the 1982 protests in Warren County, North Carolina, against a dump are significant and monumental. And I think those are the things that we must never forget to understand how our communities have been fighting for clean air, for clean land, for clean water, for access to nature from the beginning. And also, it's important for me to understand that as we find our way in this kind of space of quote unquote environmentalism of the outdoors of nature, that we are that we will hear, that we will become familiar with some of the known events. So for example, individuals and characters like Rachel Carson, the book Silent Spring, the fight against DDT, and to understand the importance of that event, and to always be able to know that there's more to the story. There can be an incompleteness. and what it means to know that a basis of the lawsuit for DDT was also grounded in the work of the Chicano lawyer Ralph or Rafaela Vascal on behalf of 6 migrant farm workers, including nursing mothers. That is the story and the heritage that we all carry. That's part of our respective communities as well. In addition, a reminder that, for example, on April 22nd, 1970, so Earth Day, right, the very first Earth Day, at that moment, Mexican-American Chicano activist Arturo Sandoval proclaimed to a Chicano audience in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This is a quote from him. And America, white America, has lost its ability to cry and laugh and sing and love and live. And that is what we're addressing here today. Our humanity, our hope, and our determination to make this society and all societies, human societies, livable societies. And to those environments, human, life-supporting kinds of environments. Imagine this, a Chicano saying this. He was part of the first Earth Day organizing in Albuquerque. The power of that, I didn't know this history when I first started, and to know that part of my heritage, part of my roots, and really also represented and reflective of many of our communities have been part of this movement, but perhaps less known. And so to me, this idea that there's many roots in this work that help seed this space now, where we stand, and that this thought of the seed is instructive to me. It's not just the seed of the work of the movement, it's the seed of you, of your choices, of your decision, of your career, of your path, of your work, in that you will continue to be able to look at the ways that you can support the nurturing ground for each other for what's going to fruit and blossom. I like to think that you are radical and revolutionary in this grounding in nature. As radical as the seed. I think for those of you that are familiar with this, you know that one of the names of that little first root is called the radical. And I also like this quote that reminds me of that. No risk is more terrifying than that taken by the first root. It assesses the light and humidity of the moment, reverts to its programming, and quite literally takes the plunge. So remember that as some of you are evaluating and figuring out your own role in place of this work in the movement, as you will continue to make choices and decisions, as you will continue to find your way and establish your leadership, you are as radical and as bold as the seed. Now, you're also wayfinding, navigating, and orienting in unknown and known landscapes. For those of you that go outdoors, you understand the role and value of a map. And a map it gives you some information, but you're still gonna have to be the one that does the hike. It's important to kind of acknowledge what is the landscape, what are landmarks, and to, of course, incorporate risk management, to understand how you will be present in that landscape. Many of you will figure how to navigate this cultural landscape in many different ways. You will adapt in terms of your code switching. You will understand how to make sure that you continue to express yourself without leaving your cultura at the trailhead. But also the exciting thing is that you are going to help construct new maps. The maps of the future co-created by you, that they're also going to reflect new designs and incorporate a decision-making and design-making for those that were not included before. As Dr. Carolyn Finney often likes to say, she's reminded how often some of these places were not designed with her in mind. Her as a Black woman, they were not designed with her in mind. But now you get to be active in this, not just in terms of your presence, not just in terms of your projects, but in terms of your advocacy, in terms of your policy work, in terms of your relationship building, so much that you get to have a role in this space that we associate different terms like public lands, the environment, conservation, nature, and all of those will continue to be shaped and evolve with your participation. That's the exciting thing. I'll share a couple of last things as well. For me, this idea that nature can provide reminders has been incredibly instructive. as a way to, whenever I get stuck, whenever it helps remind me and unpack the effects of colonization, whenever I need moments of restorations, and of course to be able to think about why I'm doing this in the first place. Whether I accept or not the term public lands advocate, it's still for me connecting the role of what have I accepted as my reciprocal relationship in terms of being a steward and a protector of the land. And to me, that's powerful because it's an invitation to think about that relation differently. I think about, for example, the role of sacred, creative, and destructive fire, and how we have learned the importance of prescribed burning. That if we are overly suppressive, if we just put out every fire because we think it's bad, it's not good, we unfortunately, those past practices catch up to us, and compounded by climate change, we have set up the tinderbox of much more intensive destructive fire. So then I ask for myself as a reminder, what is the prescribed burning that is important in all of my different spaces? The prescribed burning in my relationships, the prescribed burning in aspects of the culture that are no longer nurturing and healing, the prescribed burning of the ways in which I have understood my relationship to nature are no longer helpful, because what I care about is what needs to be burned to be able to have that landscape for healthy succession, for things to grow. And that's exciting to me. I also think about how the emergence of the river in a sinuosity, it's not linear. In LA, of course, the work that's happening around the LA River is important and significant to understand when we restore flow. It's much more than just dechannelizing the river. It's acknowledging that the emergence, that sinuous flow, comes from the divergence and the convergence. The divergence is that reminder of engaging that which is different. What moves me out of my place of comfort? The convergence is a reminder what keeps me connected in commonality. How do I ensure this idea of community, of staying together, and that it is not a channelized flow? It is a sinuous flow. And yet, from that, there is emergence. In addition, I think about this idea, lastly, of the edge effect and the ecotone, our respective habitats. We know that when habitats meet in nature, that can be a zone of abundance. And it's very different than how we as humans have approached borders. Often our human borders have tended to be extremely bifurcating and separating and harmful. And yet nature can treat borders as these zones of abundance. And it's a reminder for me what happens when the habitat that is me, the habitat that is my space, the habitat that is this culture, how does it connect to the habitats of others? And how can that be an invitation and an opportunity to engage with difference in such a way? And to me, it is that reminder of how the future is natural. The future is natural in its interconnectedness. The future is natural in its fluidity. The future is natural in its boundary spanning, sin fronteras. And it is a vision for me, a future of a life affirming logic, of a life affirming idea and framing, rather than a harmful, reductive, and mechanistic framing that through its colonizing impacts has reduced the relations with each other and our relations with the land as objectifying, as transactional, as limited only by the use and by the value of use, and less to think about these interconnected relationships of stewardship, of abundance, of regenerative cycles. That's the revolutionary component. How can we be revolutionary? By being reconnected to regenerative cycles. And to me, that is exciting. So that when I go out and see that tree, I am reminded that the tree is not just an object, and it isn't just about the classification that comes from counting and measuring, and its value isn't only in its use and its utility of wood. a reminder that what does that mean to be in breath with that tree, to be in relationship, to be, as Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer says, being in this gifting economy. And that's powerful because I'm excited that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, these maps of the future are going to have that impact by you. And that the work is not easy. It does take a lot of work. There isn't a simple and easy way to always do it. And I'm always cautious about the idea that we promote fluidity and non-binary expansive being and thinking. And I want to make sure that we're always cautious as to not end up with then binary outcomes of expectations. And that's the challenge. So I'm going to close my part by reading to you a very small part from a book that has been guiding me, and it's titled Joyful Militancy, Building Thriving Resistance in Toxic Times. And this little piece for me is this orientation and reminder and affirmation. We can't all be friends, and some forms of life will never be compatible. This is the ethical basis of the logic of affinity as well. It can never be a totally inclusive come one, come all process, because this would mean welcoming the worst of empire and all of its toxic ways of relating. Some differences might mean that people cannot work together. Maybe. Differences might also signal potential for practices, orientations, and priorities that are resonant and complementary without becoming the same. Differences might then become starting points for new complicities and the growth of shared power. If relationships are what compose the world and what shape our desires, values, and capacities, then freedom is the capacity to participate more actively in this process of composition. Friendship and resistance are interconnected. When we are supported, we are more willing to confront that which threatens to destroy our worlds. Friendship and affinity are not things, but processes and open questions, which produce partial responses, further questions, flashes of certainty and confidence, but never a definitive answer. And with that, muchas, muchas, muchas gracias. I want to thank all of you. Felicidades, congratulations for this step in your path. And also with gratitude to all of the mentors, colleagues, that I get to know some of you that I've connected with, that you have helped me out in the past. What a beautiful example of what it means to have an ecosystem of community. So con eso, gratitude.